Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. You know how we are, always digging into the stuff that really matters, and, well, today is no different. We're going deep on something pretty fundamental. Habits. How those little buggers form and how we can, wrestle back some control and get them working for us, not against us.
Exactly. And to do that, we're turning to Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a treasure trove of insights.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, we know you're all about maximizing your time, getting to the good stuff quickly. So no worries, we've sifted through the whole book and distilled it down to the most actionable and potent insights. Think of this as your cheat sheet to understanding the core of why we do what we do and how to use that knowledge to actually create change.
And we want to be very clear, that is our mission today. To give you, our listener, a strong grasp of the mechanics behind habit formation, so you'll have the tools to build good habits and ditch those bad ones.
It's all about giving you that practical knowledge, and James Clear's framework is a powerful one to work with, let me tell you. But where do we even begin with something as complex as habits?
Well, I think a good place to start is with a feeling that I'm sure many of us are familiar with. Putting in the effort, but not seeing those results right away. This is where Clear's concept of the plateau of latent potential comes in.
The what now? You got to break this down for
You
me.
think of an ice cube. You're applying heat to it, right? You go from 25 to 31 degrees, and visually, nothing seems to happen. It feels like all that energy is wasted.
Right.
But then boom, the instant it hits 32 degrees, that ice cube melts, the magic number.
But it's not magic, really, is it?
No, not at all. It's about understanding that all that invisible work wasn't for nothing. It was accumulating beneath the surface. And that's exactly how it works with building habits. You might be exercising regularly, studying consistently, practicing a skill diligently, but you don't see that immediate outward progress.
I can see how that would be discouraging.
It certainly can be, but the key takeaway here for you, our listener, is this. Trust the process, even when those gains aren't immediately visible. Your efforts are compounding beneath the surface, just like that ice cube. And it sets the stage for breakthroughs in any area you're focusing on.
It's like those overnight successes you hear about.
Yeah.
They rarely are overnight, are they? There's all that unseen work behind them.
Exactly. What appears as a sudden success is often the result of years of accumulated unseen effort. All those hours of practice, the failures, the lessons learned, they all contribute to that eventual breakthrough moment.
And for you, our listener, particularly for those who are eager to learn and see those results, this is a vital reminder. Consistent effort in learning, even when it feels slow, is never truly wasted. Every piece of information you absorb, every hour you dedicate, it's all building towards those aha moments, those leaks in understanding.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that I found incredibly insightful in Atomic Habits. The powerful connection between our habits and our identity. It's not just about what we do, but who we believe ourselves to be at our core.
It's almost like our actions are a reflection of our self-image.
Exactly. Clear argues that behaviors that conflict with our self-perception simply won't last. Think about it. You might desire greater wealth, but if you see yourself primarily as a consumer, someone who loves to spend,
Then you're going to keep finding yourself right back in those same spending habits, even if it sabotages your bigger financial goals.
that's the idea. Or let's say you want to be healthier, but your core identity is someone who prioritizes comfort and ease above all else. Those easy, less active choices are going to keep pulling you back, making that consistent exercise routine a real uphill battle.
Makes sense. So for real change to happen, the kind that lasts, we need to go deeper.
That's the key. Clear suggests true habit change requires a shift in those underlying beliefs about ourselves. You can set goals, make plans, but without addressing who you believe you are at your core, those changes often end up being temporary.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a much deeper issue.
Precisely. And here's a powerful way to look at this, and one that resonated with me. Every action we take, every single one, is like casting a tiny vote for the type of person we want to become.
Okay, I like that analogy.
It's not about being perfect, it's about consistency. Each time you choose the healthy snack over the junk food, each time you opt for reading a chapter instead of binge watching TV, you're casting a vote for the person you're aiming to be.
It's like building a mosaic. Each small piece might seem insignificant on its own, but together they form a larger, more intricate picture.
Exactly. And over time, these small wins, these seemingly insignificant choices, well, they accumulate and reinforce a new identity. Each healthy meal, each workout completed, each page read them. Those become votes for healthy, fit, knowledgeable, They shape who you are.
And this ties in directly to the idea of gaining knowledge. Every new concept you grasp, every piece of information you absorb, it's a vote for being a learner, for embracing knowledge and understanding.
Absolutely. And of course, this works in reverse too, right? Each time you indulge in a habit you'd rather not have, it's also a vote for that particular identity. But the good news is you don't need to be perfect. Just like in any election, you don't need every single vote to win. You just need a majority.
The goal is to cast more votes for the identity you want to cultivate, for the person you want to become.
Exactly. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty of how habits actually work. Clear presents a 4-stage pattern that he believes is the bedrock of every single habit.
4 stages. Lay it on me.
These 4 stages always happen in the same sequence. First, you have the cue, then comes the craving, next is the response, and finally, you have the reward.
Okay, let's unpack this. What's the deal with the cue? What actually triggers a habit to kick in?
Think of the cue as a trigger. It's a bit of information, a signal to your brain that a reward might be coming. Our ancestors, way back when, they focused on cues that predicted primary rewards like food and water. Today, we're more tuned into cues that predict secondary rewards like money, praise, that sense of satisfaction.
So our brain essentially learns to associate certain cues with positive outcomes.
That's right. And once that association is made, the cue triggers the next stage. The craving. This is what drives the habit. Not necessarily a craving for the habit itself, but more like a craving for the change in state that the habit brings about, like that urge to check social media. It's not about the act of scrolling, it's more about that craving for connection, for entertainment, maybe even just to avoid being bored.
It's the feeling we're after.
Exactly. And then comes the response, which is the actual habit itself. This could be a physical action like reaching for your phone, or a mental action like deciding not to go to the gym. It's what you actually do or don't do.
And last but not least, the reward. This is the payoff, right?
Exactly, and it does 2 main things. First, it satisfies that craving that started the whole process. But second, and this is crucial, it teaches your brain which actions are worth remembering and repeating in the future.
So the reward is what reinforces the habit, making us more likely to do it again when we encounter that same cue. It's like our brain saying, hey, that felt good, let's do that again sometime.
Precisely. And as Clear emphasizes, if any one of these stages is missing, a habit won't stick. No cue, the habit won't get triggered. Craving not strong enough, you won't have motivation to act. Behavior too difficult, you won't be able to do it. And if the reward isn't satisfying, you won't have a reason to repeat the habit. All 4 have to be in place. And for our listeners, understanding this cycle that underpins all our behaviors, it gives you a powerful lens to analyze and influence your own actions. It's that deeper understanding you're looking for.
It's like having a roadmap to navigate your own habits. So we've got this 4-stage model. How do we actually use it to change our habits? Where do we even begin?
Clear says the first step is all about awareness.
Awareness? You mean just paying attention to what we're doing?
Basically, yes. Clear describes the brain as this prediction machine that's constantly processing information, learning from repetition. Over time, habits become so ingrained, so automatic, that they require less and less conscious thought. It's like how experienced chefs can taste a dish and instantly know what's missing, or those mechanics who can diagnose a car problem just by the sound. Our brains are constantly identifying patterns, predicting outcomes, often without us even realizing it.
So it's almost like we're on autopilot a lot of the time.
Right, and the more automatic a behavior becomes, the less likely we are to question it. We just do it. And that lack of self-awareness, well, it becomes a major roadblock when we're trying to change unwanted behaviors. We're not even fully conscious of what we're doing in the first place.
So how do we snap out of that autopilot mode? How do we become more conscious of our habits?
Clear has a few practical techniques that can help with this. One he calls pointing and calling. It sounds super simple, but it's surprisingly effective. You basically just say your actions out loud as you're doing them.
Like, I'm opening the fridge, I'm reaching for the cookies.
Exactly. By verbalizing it, you're bringing that unconscious habit into your conscious awareness. You're creating a pause in that automatic sequence, forcing yourself to acknowledge what you're doing.
It's a way to disrupt that automatic pattern.
Right. Another useful method is the habits scorecard. It's super straightforward. You make a list of all your current habits, the good and the bad. The simple act of writing them down can be incredibly revealing, making you more aware of those ingrained patterns of behavior. And for our listeners, this provides that clear, actionable first step that's so crucial for initiating positive change. It's about taking stock of where you are before you can chart a course for where you want to go.
Okay, so awareness is the foundation. Now let's dive into Clear's 4 laws of behavior change, his framework for actually creating new habits and breaking old ones. The first law is all about making good habits obvious. How do we do that?
This first law, make it obvious, it's all about boosting the visibility of those cues that trigger the habits you want. And one really effective strategy is something called implementation intentions. This came out of a 2001 British study on exercise habits, and the results were pretty amazing.
Oh, I'd love to hear about that.
Researchers took people who were trying to build a better exercise routine, and they divided them into 3 groups. Group 1, they just tracked their exercise. Group 2, they got some motivational materials on the benefits of exercise, and they also tracked their exercise. But Group 3, they did all that. Plus, they were instructed to create a specific plan outlining exactly when and where they would exercise.
So they were given a structure.
Exactly. They had to complete this sentence. During the next week, I will partake in at least 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on day at time and place.
What happened?
Well, in the first 2 groups, only about 35 to 38% of the participants exercised at least once a week. The motivational stuff didn't seem to make much of a difference.
Makes sense. Just hearing about the benefits of something doesn't always translate into action.
But here's the kicker. In that 3rd group, the one that made those specific plans, a whopping 91% of them exercised at least once a week.
Wow. That's a huge jump. So just having a concrete plan in place made all the difference.
That's the power of implementation intentions. They take those vague aspirations like, I want to exercise more, and turn them into concrete plans of action. I will go for a 30-minute run on Monday at 7 a.m. in the park. It removes the guesswork, making it much more likely you'll follow through.
So it's about removing any ambiguity.
Exactly. Now, another technique for making good habits obvious is something called habit stacking. It's all about linking a new habit you want to build onto an existing habit you already do regularly.
Piggybacking on an existing routine.
Exactly. The formula is simple. After current habit, I will new habit. Clear gives some great examples, like expressing one thing you're grateful for right after you sit down for dinner, or giving your partner a kiss as soon as you get into bed.
So it's about leveraging the momentum of those existing routines to build new ones.
Exactly. And once you get comfortable with it, you can even chain multiple small habits together.
That's like building a positive chain reaction.
That's the idea. Now, another important aspect of making good habits obvious is our environment.
Our surroundings have a huge impact, don't they?
A massive one. The more visible a cue for a good habit is in your environment, the more likely you are to notice it and act on it. Think about it. People are more likely to drink a certain brand of soda if it's prominently displayed in every store, or to go to a particular coffee shop if there's one on every corner. The most obvious choice often becomes our default.
Out of sight, out of mind, as they say.
Right, and Clear emphasizes that vision is our dominant sense. We've got about 10 million sensory receptors dedicated to sight out of 11 million total. So what we see has a huge impact on what we do.
It's about being mindful of what we surround ourselves with.
Exactly. Design your environment to be full of cues for those good habits and free from cues that trigger the bad ones. So, for example, lay out your workout clothes the night before. That makes it more obvious and easier to get your exercise in the morning.
And to break bad habits. Hide the temptations.
Exactly. Don't keep junk food out on the counter if you're trying to eat healthier. Put those tempting snacks in a less accessible place. And Clear also talks about how changing your environment entirely can make it easier to break old habits and build new ones.
Like a fresh start?
In a way, yes, because you escape all those subtle triggers that tend to push you back towards your old habits. So working at a different coffee shop than usual or designating a specific area in your home for studying, that can help you establish new routines without the interference of those old environmental cues.
It reminds me of that study on heroin addiction among soldiers returning from Vietnam.
Oh, that's a fascinating one. Researchers found that a surprisingly small percentage of soldiers who had been heroin users in Vietnam became re-addicted within a year of coming back home. This was kind of shocking at the time because people thought heroin addiction was a life sentence. But it turned out the dramatic shift in environment from a war zone filled with triggers to a home environment without those cues played a big role in breaking the cycle of addiction.
It highlights the importance of shaping our surroundings to support the habits we want to build.
Absolutely. And as Clear points out, people with the best self-control are often just really good at designing their environment to minimize the need for it in the first place. They make it easier to make the right choices by proactively removing temptations.
Makes sense. Now, let's move on to the second law. Make it attractive. How do we make the habits we want more appealing? Because, let's be honest, some habits, like exercising or saving money, they don't always seem that fun in the moment.
Right. But the second law acknowledges that the more appealing an opportunity, the more likely it is to become a habit. And a key driver of attractiveness is dopamine.
Ah, dopamine. The feel-good neurotransmitter, the reward chemical.
Exactly. Habits work on a dopamine-driven feedback loop. When dopamine levels go up, so does our motivation to take action. And research suggests that the anticipation of the reward often triggers a bigger dopamine spike than the actual reward itself.
So we're motivated by the excitement of what's to come.
Exactly. So how do we use this to make good habits more attractive? One way is through temptation bundling. This is where you pair an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
Okay, I like where this is going.
It's like, after habit I need, I will habit I want. So, for example, you might only allow yourself to listen to your favorite podcast want after you've finished your daily gratitude practice need. Or maybe you only watch sports want after you've made a certain number of important phone calls need.
It's like bribing yourself, but in a good way.
In a way, yes, you're making the need-to-do tasks more appealing by attaching them to something you already enjoy. And another big influence on what we find attractive is social norms. Clear talks about 3 key rules of social influence here.
Okay, tell me more.
The first rule is closeness. We tend to copy the habits of people we're close to, family, friends, colleagues. The second rule is the many. We're more likely to adopt behaviors that are common within a group. Like Solomon Ash's famous conformity experiments, where people would agree with obviously wrong answers just because everyone else in the group was saying it.
It's the power of peer pressure, right?
Exactly. The third rule is the powerful. We tend to mimic the habits of people who are credible and high status. Think about it. If your goal is to become a better musician, being around a group of dedicated musicians, seeing their dedication and practice habits, that can be incredibly motivating.
You're more likely to adopt those same habits when you see them modeled by people you admire.
Exactly. And finally, Clear discusses how we can actually rewire our brains to enjoy habits that initially feel difficult or unpleasant.
That's what I want to know. How do we make those hard things more enjoyable?
It often comes down to a deliberate shift in mindset and reframing how we perceive the habit. Instead of thinking, ugh, I have to wake up early for work, you can try framing it as, I get to wake up early and start my day with intention and purpose. That simple change in language from obligation to opportunity can make a big difference.
It's like finding the silver lining.
Exactly. You can also reframe habits to emphasize their benefits rather than focusing on what you perceive as drawbacks. So instead of seeing exercise as a chore, a punishment, view it as an investment in your health, a way to build strength and resilience. Reframe saving money not as a restriction, but as a path to greater freedom and security in the future.
So it's about actively choosing a different perspective.
Precisely. You can transform potentially unappealing tasks into more desirable ones by consciously changing your associations with them.
Okay, we've covered 2 laws. Make it obvious and make it attractive. Let's move on to the third one. Make it easy. How do we reduce the friction that comes with developing good habits? Because let's face it, sometimes getting started is the hardest part.
The third law highlights that mastering a habit, it doesn't start with perfection. It starts with repetition. It's about getting those reps in. And there's a concept in neuroscience called Hebb's Law that says neurons that fire together wire together. Meaning, every time you repeat an action, those connections in your brain get stronger, making the behavior more and more automatic.
It's like creating a well-worn path in your brain, making it easier to follow that route each time.
Exactly. And think about the habits that dominate so many of our lives. Things like mindlessly scrolling through our phones or constantly checking email. These are often the habits we engage in without even thinking because they're so incredibly easy and convenient.
It's the path of least resistance.
Exactly. Clear makes the point that you can think of every habit as an obstacle standing between you and what you want. A new diet is an obstacle to fitness goals. A meditation practice is an obstacle to feeling calmer. So the easier you make the habit itself, the less friction there is between you and the desired outcome.
So we need to pave the way, make it as smooth a journey as possible.
That's the idea. And one of the most effective ways to do this is through environment design, which we talked about earlier. But it's not just about making cues obvious, it's also about making the actions themselves easier to do. Choose locations to practice your new habit that are already part of your daily routine. Going to the gym becomes easier if it's on your way to or from work.
It's about making it as seamless as possible, integrating those desired habits into the existing flow of your life.
Exactly. Think about the Japanese concept of lean production. It's all about removing waste and inefficiency from the production process, even down to redesigning workspaces so workers don't waste time reaching for tools. They made things super efficient. We can apply the same principles to our personal habits.
Streamlining our routines, removing those unnecessary steps or roadblocks.
Yes. Even small adjustments can make a big difference. Pre-packing your gym bag the night before removes a little bit of friction from getting ready for your morning workout. Prepping healthy meals in advance makes it easier to eat well, even when you're tired or pressed for time.
It's about setting yourself up for success.
Absolutely. And the flip side of this is, to break bad habits, you want to increase friction, make them harder to do.
So put your phone in a different room when you're trying to work.
Exactly. Put those tempting snacks in a harder-to-reach spot. If you find yourself mindlessly scrolling social media, delete those apps from your phone. Even those small increases in friction can be surprisingly effective in deterring unwanted behavior.
It's about making the path to those bad habits a little more difficult to tread.
That's the idea. And then there's the 2-minute rule, which I think is a really useful concept for anyone starting a new habit.
The 2-minute rule, I like the sound of this. Tell me more.
It's simple. When you're starting a new habit, scale it down until it takes less than 2 minutes to do.
So it's about making it ridiculously easy to get started.
Exactly. The idea is to make it so easy you can't say no. Read before bed becomes read just one page. Do yoga becomes take out my yoga mat. Study becomes open my textbook.
It's about building that initial momentum, overcoming that inertia.
Exactly. Habits are the entry point, not the destination. They're the cab ride to the gym, not the complete workout. And to make good habits practically unavoidable and bad habits nearly impossible, Clear talks about something called commitment devices.
Commitment devices. Intriguing. What are those?
Basically, a commitment device is a choice you make in the present that controls your actions in the future. You're essentially locking in good behavior and restricting the possibility of bad behavior.
So like strategically limiting your options.
Yes. There's a famous story about Victor Hugo, the guy who wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame. He apparently locked away all his clothes except for this big shawl so he'd be forced to stay home and write, no temptation to go out.
Wow, that's dedication.
Right. But you don't have to go to those extremes. More everyday examples are things like buying snacks in single servings instead of those huge bags to help control portions, adding yourself to self-exclusion lists for online gambling sites, things like that. The idea is to make it harder to deviate from your desired behavior than to actually do it.
Make the right choice the default choice.
Yes. And then, of course, there's automation. It's kind of the ultimate commitment device, using technology to make good habits the default and bad habits practically impossible.
Technology is a tool for self-improvement.
Exactly. Things like setting up automatic bill payments, using website blockers to avoid distractions, even the design of a cash register system that inherently prevents theft. These are all examples of automation.
It's about making those desired behaviors automatic and effortless.
Yes. But Clear does offer a word of caution here. Relying too much on automation can have its downsides. Excessive convenience can lead us to mindlessly engage in easy tasks while neglecting the harder but ultimately more rewarding work. It's important to be mindful of how automation is influencing our overall behavior patterns.
Right. It's a tool, not a magic bullet.
Exactly. And now let's move on to the final law. Make it satisfying. How do we make sure our good habits are rewarding enough that we actually stick with them?
It's got to feel good, right? Otherwise, why bother?
Exactly. The fourth law recognizes that behaviors that are immediately rewarded are much more likely to be repeated. But in today's world, many of the most beneficial habits, saving money, regular exercise, they often have delayed returns. And that can be tough because we're wired for instant gratification.
We're programmed to seek that immediate pleasure.
Our brains evolved in an environment where immediate rewards were often crucial for survival. So we naturally prioritize that instant hit of pleasure over the long-term benefits.
It's like choosing that delicious but unhealthy treat over the healthier, less exciting option.
That's the idea. So it's essential to find ways to make those good habits feel successful and rewarding right away, even in small ways. Those feelings of accomplishment signal to your brain that the habit was worthwhile, that it should be repeated.
So how do we bridge that gap between the effort and the eventual but delayed reward?
One way is through reinforcement. Consciously give yourself an immediate reward when you complete your desired habit. It doesn't have to be big. Maybe it's spending a few minutes on a hobby you enjoy after a study session, or transferring a small amount of money into a fun money savings account after each workout.
So it's about creating those positive associations, those mini celebrations that reinforce the behavior.
Exactly. Another powerful tool is visual measurement and habit tracking. This is about actively keeping track of whether you did your habit each day. You can use a habit journal, a tracking app, or even something as simple as moving paper clips from one jar to another.
I've actually done that paperclip thing before, and it's surprisingly motivating.
It really is. Habit tracking serves a few purposes. It acts as a visual reminder to take action. It's motivating because you can see your progress and don't want to break your streak. And it provides a little hit of satisfaction each time you mark another successful day. It's like a tangible record of your progress, a visual representation of those votes you're casting for the identity you're building.
It makes those small wins more concrete.
Right, but Clear does point out that there's a potential downside to tracking. We can become so focused on the metric itself that we lose sight of the underlying goal. He calls this Goodhart's Law.
Goodhart's Law, I'm not familiar with that.
Basically, it says that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So you might get overly fixated on the number on the scale, even if it leads to unhealthy crash dieting, or prioritize working long hours just to rack up more time, even if you're not actually being productive. The metric becomes the goal instead of a tool to help you achieve the goal.
It's a reminder to keep the bigger picture in mind.
Exactly. Now, to tie everything together, Clear sums up these core principles with what he calls the cardinal rules of habit change.
Okay, what are the cardinal rules?
They are: make it obvious and make it invisible for bad habits, make it attractive and make it unattractive for bad habits, make it easy and make it difficult for bad habits, and make it satisfying and make it unsatisfying for bad habits.
It's basically the 4 laws and their inversions, all in one concise package.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes the importance of getting back on track quickly if you slip up. He has this rule: never miss twice. Missing once, it happens, but missing twice in a row, that's the start of a new, unwanted pattern.
It's about nipping those slip-ups in the bud before they become full-blown relapses.
Exactly. And finally, Clear talks about how accountability partners and habit contracts can add that immediate cost to breaking bad habits.
It's about having someone hold you responsible for your actions.
That's the idea. You can even outline specific consequences for not following through on your commitments. Brian Harris's story about how his wife and trainer helped him lose weight is a great example of this in action.
It's about leveraging social support and structure to reinforce those good habits and deter the bad ones.
Exactly. Now, beyond the 4 laws, Clear also touches on some more advanced tactics in Atomic Habits.
Okay, for those who want to go even deeper.
Right. He briefly explores how your personality and even your genes can influence which habits might be a good fit for you. He calls it the explore-exploit trade-off. It's about finding the habits that align with your natural inclinations, the ones that come most naturally to you.
So it's about knowing yourself, experimenting, finding what works best for you.
Absolutely. He also introduces something called the Goldilocks rule. It basically says that we stay most motivated when we're working on tasks that are right at the edge of our abilities, not so hard that we get discouraged, but not so easy that we get bored. This is the sweet spot for sustained motivation and progress.
It's that zone where we feel challenged, but not overwhelmed.
Exactly. And for consistent long-term improvement, the practices of reflection and review are crucial.
It's about taking the time to assess what's working, what's not.
Clear highlights how high achievers across different fields, athletes like Eliud Kipchoge and Katie Ledecky, even the Los Angeles Lakers under coach Pat Riley, they all incorporate regular reflection into their routines. They identify areas for improvement, they make adjustments.
It's about continuously refining the process.
Exactly. And finally, Clear brings it all back to the core drivers of behavior. He points out that while desire is what often initiates a habit, it's the feeling of pleasure, of satisfaction, that ultimately sustains those habits over time. Wanting and liking, those are the 2 forces that drive us.
We need the initial desire to get started, but it's that feeling of enjoyment, of satisfaction that keeps us going. Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into the principles of habit formation, drawing from the brilliant ideas in Atomic Habits. We've covered a lot of ground, from the plateau of latent potential to the 4 laws of behavior change and some advanced tactics for continuous improvement.
And for you, our listener, we hope this has provided that clear and concise, yet thorough understanding you're looking for. The key takeaway is that habits are formed through a consistent 4-stage cycle, and you have the power to influence those habits, to build good ones, and break free from those that no longer serve you.
And perhaps the most empowering message from this deep dive is the profound connection between our habits and the development of our identity. Every action, no matter how small, is a vote for the person you're becoming.
So as a final thought for our listeners, consider this. What's one small habit, one tiny vote that you can implement immediately based on the insights we've discussed today? Which of the 4 laws of behavior change resonates most strongly with your current challenges? And how can you begin applying these principles to different areas of your life?
We truly hope this deep dive has.